to another English lesson of Guru Gedara program. So today we are hoping to touch another grammar lesson to you. So I have Miss Indira here to conduct the lesson, and I know it is a grammar lesson, Indira, but can you explain our students what's the lesson that you are going to do?
Yes, Miss Nirmala, today we are going to learn passive voice. So, learning passive voice should take lot of concentration. So, children, you better listen and learn, right? Am I correct, Miss Nirmala?
Yes, that's why I mentioned we are doing a grammar lesson, so that you have to pay attention to this lesson.
Yes. So, under passive voice, we are going to learn only one segment, that is past perfect tense. So, we are going to learn how we turn sentences in passive form, past perfect tense. But before that, I have a small recap to do. That is, actually we are going to remember some basics. So, that is why we are moving back to the slide. What is a passive voice sentence? So, Nirmala Miss, we should first know what is a passive voice sentence if you want to learn passive voice sentence. So, remember children, a passive voice sentence does not focus on the doer of the action, or else in other words, in passive voice, an importance is not given to the doer. The action is important. Now look at the example sentences given to you.
The room was cleaned yesterday.
Yes.
No person is mentioned there.
Yes, exactly. So the room was cleaned, but we are not sure or we don't know who did that. So it is not important. So likewise, now look at the second sentence given.
Dinner is served at 8 p.m.
So it is dinner served at 8 p.m. We are not bothered about who served the dinner, Miss Nirmala.
Yes, there are some instances where the doer is not important.
Exactly. So, in a passive voice sentence, children, the doer is not very important. Only the action is important. So, knowing what is a passive voice sentence, we will learn or we will get an idea when to use passive voice sentences. Now, you must be wondering why we are learning these passive voice sentences,
Yes.
aren't they, Miss?
Exactly.
So, we have to tell them where we have to use passive voice sentences. So, there can be many, but here today I have taken 3 main instances where the passive voice sentences can be used. So, we will move back to the slide. There are 3 main instances where we use passive form. Number 1, when you don't know who did the action. An action has taken place, you don't know who did the action. Yes, example.
Yes. My car was stolen.
So, you don't know who stole your car, but you can tell this particular action in passive form where the doer is not important. So, we will move on to the next instance. Yes, it is when you are not interested in who did the action again. So, you don't want to know, and the second instance is you are not interested, you don't want to know. So, Miss, shall we see what we have here?
Yes. My car was made in 2010.
So, as far as you have the car, you are not interested in who made the car, right?
Yes.
So, likewise, we will go to the third instance. When you don't want to blame or highlight someone for not doing an action. So, there can be instances where we have to let go of the person for not doing an action. So, for that we can use passive sentences. Remember that. So, look at the example, children.
The dishes were not done yesterday.
So maybe the dishes were not done by the daughter or by the son. So but you don't want to blame that person for not doing the dishes. So you, without mentioning the person who is assigned for that, you just say in passive, the dishes were not done yesterday.
Yes, because now you don't have to worry about the person because the action is not happened.
Yes, right? Okay. So now you know what are the three main instances that you have to use passive form. And now we will move on to passive form. What are the uses? So why we learn passive form? Isn't it, Miss Nirmala?
Yes, they should know the reason why we should learn passive voice.
Yes. So it is very important that we have a clear idea about that. Otherwise, you will also be wondering why we are learning passive voice. So we use passive form when, yes, now look at the slide. We are going to learn now when we are going to use passive voice. So the first one, we use the passive voice when we want to emphasize the action more than the person performing it, because the action is more important. So in other words, as we have mentioned earlier, when the doer is not very important, only the action is important, we use passive form. Look at the example.
More and more computers are sold every day.
So selling computers is important, not who is selling computers. So here we say more and more computers are sold every day. Now look at the next instance. Person performing the action is obvious or unknown. Sometimes you know the person exactly this one is doing this action, or sometimes you don't know at all. For those instances we use passive form as example given. Now look at this example, children.
The thief was arrested 2 hours ago.
Now we will look at the second instance where we have to use passive form. When the person performing the action is obvious or unknown. So sometimes there can be actions we are really want to know who did the action, or sometimes we are not at all bothered about the person who did the action. So these instances also we use passive form. Look at the given example.
The thief was arrested 2 hours ago.
Here the doer is obvious. So here we have used passive form with the doer, right? Then next one, we want to avoid an active sentence whose subject is somebody, nobody, or someone, or etc. Now in these cases, in the active voice sentence, doer can be mentioned as somebody, nobody, or someone. But when you turn this active voice sentence, you just leave out the somebody or anybody and write the passive voice sentence. So in these instances, you use the sentences as given. Look at the example.
The bank was robbed.
Yes, so the bank was robbed. We are not at all bothered who robbed the bank, by anybody or somebody or nobody. So likewise, we are using passive voice sentences in certain instances. Now look at the next one.
Now, Indira, we are talking about passive voice.
Yes.
So why don't we discuss what active voice is?
Exactly, that is a very good question, Miss Nirmala. So we'll move on to learn what is an active voice sentence. Now look at the slide. So what is an active voice sentence? So we were talking about passive voice sentences where the doer is not very important. So the active voice sentence, what is it? An active voice sentence is where the subject does the action of the verb, or in other words, the doer is important. So here, Miss Nirmala, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Now remember children, in passive voice, the person who does the action is not that important, but in active voice, the doer is very important. The person who does is very important, that is the subject there.
Okay. So now let's move on to the example, and then it will help you to understand it more clearly. Shall we? Okay. Now look at the first sentence. John cleaned the room. John cleaned the room. Who cleaned the room? John. Now here John is the subject. Cleaned is the verb and the room is the object. So I hope we helped you in understanding what is an active voice sentence. Shall we look at another example? Now look here. Surani read a book. Surani read a book. Here Surani is the subject. Read is the verb. A book is the object. So now you must be really clear about what is a passive voice sentence and what is an active voice sentence. So to clear it more, we will move on to this particular diagram. How to form the passive voice. It is very easy. Now when you are given an active voice sentence, as we mentioned, we have subject, verb and object. So if you want to turn that active voice sentence into a passive voice sentence, what do you have to do? You have to do certain things. Shall we see what they are? Actually, the subject in the active voice sentence is going back to the place of the object, and the verb remains and the object moves back to the subject's place in passive voice sentence. So I have given you it in like this. These are the steps you turn an active voice sentence into a passive voice sentence. Number 1, what do you have to do first, children? Yes?
You have to put the object of the active voice sentence at beginning of the passive voice sentence. So remember, first thing, when you get a sentence, you have to divide into the 3 sections: subject, verb and an object.
Yes, and that particular object should be at the beginning of the passive voice sentence. Number 2, shall we have a look?
Turn the main verb into the past participle form, adding the helping verb accordingly.
Yes, here you are turning the verb into past participle form, children. Remember, the verb should be turned into past participle form when you turn an active voice sentence into passive voice. Then number 3, Miss Nirmala.
Add the subject of the active voice sentence, if needed, with by.
Yes. Now this is if needed. If you feel like that you want to add the subject of the active voice sentence into passive voice, only you can add. Sometimes, remember, you can write passive voice sentences without adding the subject. So it depends, right? So now we look at these examples, shall we?
The postman delivers the mail.
So it is the active voice sentence. So we have identified what is the subject, what is the verb and what is the object. Now look at the passive voice sentence.
The mail is delivered by the postman.
Yes, now here the postman subject has become the object, verb remains with the necessary changes, and active voice object has become the passive voice subject. So the mail is delivered by the postman. So actually it has switched places. Active voice sentence subject has become an object in the passive voice, active voice object has become the subject in the passive voice. So likewise, the places have been switched. So I hope our children can remember now very well what is an active voice sentence and what is a passive voice sentence. So we will move on to our actual lesson now. Yes, it is past perfect tense in passive form. Past perfect tense. Do you have any idea, Miss Nirmala, what is a past perfect tense?
Yes, that is an action happened before. Past perfect. The action is complete.
Very good. So I hope our children also can remember what Madam Nirmala said. So what is a past perfect tense? It is when something had been done by someone before a particular time in the past or before another action was performed. So this is something happened in the past, but in the past in a particular given time. There can be several actions before the present tense. So in the past tense, several actions have taken place. So here, past perfect passive structure, there are three structures I have introduced you: affirmative, negative and interrogative. So you must be wondering what these words are, aren't they?
Forget about the words. You all know these things, children.
Yes, this is what already you know. So to make statements, so affirmative means some regular sentences. How do you turn them into past perfect tense? So here you are using the had been with the past participle form of the verb. You use had been with the past participle form of the verb. Look at the example.
The match had been won by our team.
Yes, now here the match had been won by our team. The match is the subject, been won, it is the verb, and by our team is the object. So shall we move on to the other section? It is negative, or you are adding not and making a sentence. Had not been. So you are here adding the had not been to the past participle form of the verb. Look at the example.
The letter had not been signed by the manager.
Yes. So the letter had not been signed by the manager. This is the negative sentence, a negative formed sentence. So finally, we are going to look at the interrogative or question forms. In past perfect passive, how we are going to form question. So it should be had, and you have to add the subject after had, and you have to add been plus past participle form of the verb. Had plus subject, then been, then plus past participle form of the verb. Look at the example.
Had that song been recorded by him?
Had that song been recorded by him? Is that particular song being recorded by that particular person? So, I think it is clear to you very well now how you use past perfect in statements or affirmative or in interrogative or in negative. So now with that knowledge, Ms. Nirmala, shall we move on to the
Yes.
activity? Yes.
Now we will move on to how to form. Like we will see how the past perfect tense is formed in passive form.
Yes. Look here. I have given you two sentences in active voice, and we are helping you in teaching you how to turn them into passive voice. So the active voice first sentence is,
Those prisoners had robbed 3 banks.
yes, those prisoners had robbed 3 banks. Shall we check what is the passive voice sentence in that, Miss Nirmala?
Yes. So you have to separate the subject, verb and object. So let us see, children.
3 banks had been robbed by those prisoners. Very good. So I think there's a question or an interrogative. So shall we check what it can be?
Had Diana solved the problem? Had the problem been solved by Diana?
Yes. Had the problem been solved by Diana? So we'll move on to the next activity. This will help you in understanding passive form in past perfect tense in very clearly. Yes. Here Jenny had cleaned the table. So shall we give them some time, Miss Nirmala, for them to write
Attempt. Yes. And remember, children, you have to break them subject, verb and object. So then it is easy. So here in this first one, Jenny is the subject, had cleaned is the verb, the tables are the object.
Yes.
So then you know what to be taken at the beginning.
Yes. So here is the answer. The tables had been cleaned by Jenny. So that is the passive voice sentence. So here we have turned it into passive voice. The tables had been cleaned by Jenny. Second one, they had painted all the chairs. They had painted all the chairs. Check your answers, children. Yes.
Again, now you can separate them. They had painted all the chairs. So then you take all the chairs as the subject here and then see the change. Had painted in active voice, you have to add been there. Had painted becomes had been painted.
Yes.
And there's by, they become them.
Yes, so all the chairs had been painted by them. So I think it is very clear to our children now to turn a given active voice sentence into passive voice. Now look at the third one and the fourth one. Yes, we will give you some time to change them into passive voice sentences. Remember,
this house is the object.
Yes. So we have to give them some novel way of sentences, then only they will understand how to write any kind of active voice sentence in passive form, aren't they, Miss?
Yes, because I know most of the students fear this type of test activities, but don't worry, if you know the rules, this is so simple.
Yes. Shall we check the answers?
Yes.
Yes. Third one, here's the answer.
This house had been seen by them earlier. As I told you, now see, we have taken only this house as the subject. Had seen, had converted it to had been seen by them, and we have added that earlier at the end.
Because you can add this earlier into some other place also.
Yes.
But it is safe to add earlier at the end of the sentence.
Yes.
Right? Okay, either we can say this house had been seen earlier by them.
That is also correct.
Correct. But here for everybody's safety, we have kept it earlier as it is at the end of the sentence. Shall we check the fourth one? Yes.
The company had filled the vacancy already.
Yes. When you turn it into passive, the vacancy had been filled by the company already. So as I told you earlier, already can be moved on to some other place as well. The vacancy had been filled already by the company.
Yes.
But here we have kept the word already at the end of the sentence.
Had she solved the problem? It's a question.
Oh, yes.
Had the problem been solved by her?
Here, can you remember interrogative or question form? You have to put had to the front, then the subject, then the been and the verb. So here, had the problem been solved by her. Now, we have been changing active voice sentences into passive voice, another type of activity. That is turning the passive voice sentences into active voice sentences. So, I think then when you do these two ways of changing sentences, you will be very proficient in passive voice past perfect tense. Yes, here are the 2 sentences out of 5 I have prepared you. The first one, a big mistake had been made by Namal. Now remember, this is in passive voice. You have to turn it into active voice sentence. Second one, the boy had been praised by the teacher. Again, it is a passive voice sentence. Are you ready with the answers, children?
Yes, I hope our students are also ready by now.
So then shall we check? Yes. Yeah. So the answer is, or the active voice sentence is, Namal had made a big mistake. So that is the active voice sentence. So shall we check the second one, miss?
Yes, the boy had been praised by the teacher, and the boy is the object here.
Yes, the teacher had praised the boy. So that is the active voice sentence. So there are some more, another 3 more sentences for you all to attempt. Shall we have a look? Yes. Here are they. These are in passive form. Number 3, an important lesson had been learnt by me. Number 4,
a big prize had been won by Chaya.
Number 5, the invitation card had been prepared by them. So I know by now our children can do this activity quickly. Shall we check?
I had learnt an important lesson. Chaya had won a big prize. They had prepared the invitation card.
Yes, so you all are very good. So you all must have also done the same as we helped you. So now we are moving on to your pupils book activity. So children, take your pupils book and turn to unit 11 activity 10. So here is the example given in the book. His uncle had told him about the particular vacancy. So you have to turn it into passive. So how do you turn it into passive?
He had been told about the particular vacancy by his uncle.
Yes. So here are the sentences. All the members had unanimously selected Inura as the president at the last meeting.
Somebody had taken my pen while I was away in the playground.
Mr. Pereira had checked the power supply before he started operating the machine.
Nisali had arranged the classroom before she went home.
The principal had read the letter again before it was posted. So shall we check our answers? Yes.
Inura had been unanimously selected as the president at the last meeting by all the members.
My pen had been taken by somebody while I was away in the playground.
The power supply had been checked by Mr. Pereira before he started operating the machine.
The classroom had been arranged by Nisali before she went home.
The letter had been read again by the principal before it was posted.
Yes. So there's another activity from your textbook, that is page number 120, activity 11. So here there are some negative sentences and questions. You have to turn it into passive. So there's an example given. Yes, they had not asked for any experience.
experience had not been asked for.
Yes. Had they asked for any particular qualifications?
Had any particular qualifications been asked for?
Yes. So, these are the examples. Now, we will check the uh, activity given. Look at the slide. The plumber had not repaired the broken tap in the canteen.
The broken tap had not been repaired by the plumber in the canteen, or else you can say the broken tap in the canteen had not been repaired by the plumber.
Very good. The lawyer had signed the document before he submitted it to the courts.
Right.
Yes.
So, here the document had been signed by the lawyer before he submitted it to the courts.
Yes. So, shall we move on to the next one?
It's a question there.
Yes. Hadn't he paid the telephone bills before the due date?
Hadn't the telephone bills been paid by him before the due date?
Had Tamara sent the invitations for the English day? Yes, we can say.
Yes. Had the invitations been sent by Tamara for the English day?
Yes. So, I hope we helped you in understanding past perfect passive form. So, here it is very simple. You have to add had been with the past participle form of the passive when you turn it into passive form. So, we taught you how to turn an active voice sentence into passive form and how you do it with the tense of past perfect tense, that is adding had been with the past participle form of the verb. So, we hope we helped our students in understanding this particular lesson.
Yes. My dear students, I know this lesson is a complex lesson for you, but I know Indira Miss has taught you very well, but if you think that some things are little puzzling or you want more practice, why don't you weave this on YouTube channel NI, so you can learn more by watching our program once again. Hope to see you once again with another important grammar lesson. Until then, have a pleasant day.